Today, the Ethics Commissioner ruled that Alberta Premier Danielle Smith broke the ethics code in regards to pursuing lockdown amnesty, that is, a stay of prosecution against people who are still being hounded by prosecutors for obsolete rules that were in effect a year, 2, 3 ago. I'll take you through the ruling itself, what it says, what it does not say. But I think there's an even deeper, more important story to it, which is how Alberta's deep state, as it were, is trying to get rid of Danielle Smith with an election, 11 days away now? Today, by the way, is the debate day in the province of Alberta. Danielle Smith, the leader of the UCP, the United Conservative Party, and Rachel Notley, the leader of the NDP Socialist Party, former premier who was deposed by Jason Kenney, but wants a second crack at it. And opinion polls, I've seen opinion polls showing the NDP with a real lead, but I've also seen opinion polls showing that UCP is in the lead. I think that means that it's a volatile electorate. Normally, pollsters are generally in the same zone. I think that this election is really up in the air, and the deep state has decided they're going to make the decision. I'll tell you what I mean by that. This ethics report was rushed out hastily. Most of the ethics reports by this commissioner take 3, 4+ months to do. This one was done very hastily to make sure it got out before the election. And maybe that's appropriate. Or maybe that's someone putting their thumb on the scale. It was released today, the day of the debates. Not tomorrow, the day after the debates, but today. The day where the candidates are normally preparing and where the candidates themselves would choose the issues. No, the ethics commissioner herself will choose the issue. You know that will be the case. The CBC has a major role in what I am calling an attempted coup d'etat, and here's what I mean by that. A few months ago, the CBC reported something as fact. They said that Danielle Smith or her staff emailed prosecutors on the COVID files telling them to stop. They couldn't be more explicit. They said they were emails. Now, later on, they said they hadn't actually seen the emails. Isn't that interesting? But they insisted they happened. Well, this launched an enormous investigation in the public service by the nonpartisan public service. I don't mean political appointees. I mean the permanent bureaucracy that runs the government. They checked over 1 million emails and couldn't find the emails that the CBC said had happened, even though the CBC couldn't have been sure about it because they never saw them themselves. Who would have told them, and why would they believe someone who wouldn't show them in the face of a massive investigation by the bureaucracy that showed no such emails were done? Well, in today's report by the Ethics Commissioner, which talks about Danielle Smith and her views on a kind of lockdown amnesty, there's a major section on the CBC, and I want to show it to you. And this isn't the most important part of today's story, but it shows you the collusion between the NDP, the media party, Justin Trudeau's CBC, and how it's all happening, in my opinion, with some dissident conservatives who have never accepted Danielle Smith as a leader. Here, I'd like you to, Olivia or Efron, I'm not sure who's at the computer there. Is that you, Olivia? Can you please search for CBC and go to the next instance of it and first show the title page of the report to show people what document we're referring to. I have on the screen, and I'll show it to you, and we'll have a link to it. If you could put that on the screen. This is the Office of the Ethics Commissioner, Province of Alberta, report of findings and recommendations by the Honourable Marguerite Trussler, King's Counsel, Ethics Commissioner, into allegations involving Danielle Smith. So it was published today. So that's the document I'm reading from. And then do a find the word CBC and skip the first one. That shows that, you can put it on the screen there. In January 2023, the CBC aired a story relying on an unnamed source that a political staff member in the Premier's office had directly contacted prosecutors, plural, in the Criminal Prosecution Service about COVID-related prosecutions. In March of 2023, a tape was posted to the CBC website of a conversation between Premier Smith and Arthur Pawlowski. We can talk about that a little bit later. The allegation is that the Premier and her staff, as a result of these two incidents, interfered with the administration of justice and thereby breached Section 3 of the Conflicts of Interest Act. Oh, I skipped a paragraph there. Highlights from the tape are set out in the NDP request for an investigation. I also downloaded the tape and personally listened to it. So those are the two allegations. That Arthur Pawlowski recording of his personal conversation with Danielle Smith, and far more serious in my mind, the accusation that Smith or her staff were literally emailing prosecutors, plural, and telling them what to do. That would be political interference like Justin Trudeau does. That's not something a conservative would do. Skip ahead to the next instance of the word CBC, because this is quite something. And the next one, just one more. Yeah, let's read this. The CBC allegation. We already read that. The person who was alleged to have sent one or perhaps more of the emails was incensed by the allegations and denied them. The lawyer conducting or participating in all the Coots prosecutions, Stephen Johnson, said that he was never contacted by anyone in the Premier's office. Kim Goddard, Assistant Deputy Minister of Justice, at one point held a town hall video meeting with prosecutors and reiterated the independence of the Crown prosecutors. She told them to ignore political statements and to advise her if anyone was contacted, particularly if the contact was from a political source. At one point, she requested and received from the Crown Prosecution Service an update on all cases, but it was used by her merely as a reference to bring the Attorney General and was never forwarded. The Public Service Commissioner, with the consent of the Deputy Minister, conducted an email search. I referred to that. Keep going. Skip to the next page. Look at this. I think it can be said that the members of the Crown Prosecution Services, that's another way of saying prosecutors, were annoyed and even incensed by the allegation that one of them had received outside political pressure. Assistant Deputy Minister Kim Goddard is confident no one in the service received an email. So that's not a political appointee. That's a lifer prosecutor. But look at these next two paragraphs. Absolutely devastating to the wicked liars at the CBC. Look at these two next paragraphs. All 44 Crown prosecutors who had Coots, that was the border blockade by the truckers, or COVID-related files, provided a statement that they did not receive any contact relating to their files from the Premier's office. 44 prosecutors on the COVID file. None of them appointed by Danielle Smith, of course. They're not political appointees at all. They're people, lawyers who just work for the government. 44 out of 44 said, I don't know what the CBC is talking about. I have never received such an email. And then this next line, all 32 political staff members in the Premier's office at the relevant time provided a statement that they did not contact any Crown prosecutors regarding the Coots or COVID-related files. 76 people said it is not true. That is absolutely devastating to the CBC. It was one of the grounds for this ethics complaint. And here, Marguerite Trussler, retired judge, now ethics commissioner, said in a polite way, the CBC made it up, and they continue to lie about it to this day. That's a pretty devastating rebuke of the CBC. By the way, in my experience, government lawyers are typically left of center compared to the rest of the profession. I don't think any of them are particular fans of Danielle Smith. She's not in the club. She's not a lawyer. Not most, but a lot of premiers are lawyers. Doug Ford is not. Stephen Harper, the prime minister, is not. But Brian Mulroney was a lawyer. Jean Chrétien was a lawyer. Quite a lot of politicians are lawyers. It's a fit there. Lawyers deal with laws. I think the fact that you're not in the fraternity I think lawyers sometimes look down on politicians who are not lawyers. What I'm saying is those 44 prosecutors are not lying to cover up for Danielle Smith. If anything, they disagree with her, but they're honest enough and bound by their professional ethics enough to tell the truth. Not a single prosecutor in Alberta received a single email from the Premier or her office. And remember, the CBC lie was that prosecutors, plural, received it. Incredibly, the CBC itself has not seen these alleged, purported, fabricated, made-up, imaginary emails. And you would think, after that rebuke, the CBC might have a drop of humility, but you would be deadly wrong because you don't understand the CBC is not a news organization. They are a government news organization, which is completely different. You throw an adjective in front of the word journalist, there's journalist, I know what that means. Government journalist, there's no such thing. And so I want to show you how the CBC covered this story this morning. This is incredible. I just showed you that this ethics complaint was founded on two allegations. One, the CBC claim that prosecutors were contacted by the Premier's office. And second, a conversation with Arthur Pawlowski. Here's how the CBC covers that. Alberta Premier Smith breached Conflicts of Interest Act, says Ethics Commissioner. Finding focused on Smith's contact with Minister of Justice in relation to COVID-19 related charges. Okay, let's read a bit here. Alberta's Ethics Commissioner says Danielle Smith, in her capacity as Premier, contravened the act, blah, 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 skip ahead. The whole scheme of things is a threat to democracy, skip ahead. In January, CBC News reported that a staffer in Smith's office had sent a series of emails to the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service. A series of emails, plural. Challenging prosecutors, plural, assessment and direction on cases stemming from the Coutts border blockades and protests. Later that month, CBC News reported that Smith pressured Justice Minister Tyler Shandro. Okay, skim down a little bit, just skim the whole way down. Can you see anything here, skim down, about the emails being a lie? Shandro remembered a different version. Skim down. Smith asked about the extent to which he could get involved. Seemed to suggest something was, Smith pointed out that he was the Attorney General and seemed to suggest something that was influenced by a letter sent by Ezra Levant, who runs the right-wing media company Rebel News. She wrote, I'll talk about that later. In response, blah, blah, blah. Scroll down. We're scrolling down now to see if there's any reference in this very long story to that absolutely devastating point about the emails to the prosecutors not happening. Scroll down. And then they link to the report about the author, Joel Dryden. So we just skimmed down. We didn't read it all. I'll come back to that Ezra Levant thing in a moment. More than a page in this report is dedicated to the CBC accusation that staff in Danielle Smith's office improperly contacted prosecutors, plural, with a series, plural, of emails. In fact, they restated that in the CBC story, didn't they? CBC reported that, blah, blah, blah. But it didn't happen. More than 1 million emails were searched. None existed. You search 1 million emails, you're going to find a lot of things. You did not find this, let alone a series of emails to prosecutors, plural. And then just to make sure, every single prosecutor in the province that was dealing with the Coutts border issue or COVID, every single one, 44 of them, which is an enormous waste of resources. You wonder why crime is soaring in Alberta. Maybe take those 44 prosecutors, put them on real crimes instead of thought crimes and COVID crimes.
That's a clip from something we call Rebel News Daily. It's our daily live stream hosted by my friend David Menzies, but the show also includes a rotating cast of hosts and special guests, including me. It's a great way for us to talk about the news of the day as the news is happening in an unscripted fashion, and it's an awesome way for you to interact with us as well. We stream every weekday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Mountain, wherever you find Rebel News. See you there.